Hey folks, this is Picohan on the North American server in the Tier 7 British battleship King George V. The map is Estuary, it's a standard battle, and a shout out to divmate Sir Derp and the Fiji. So the King George, like the majority of the British battleship line, is well known for spamming HE and burning down battleships. But this replay, a little bit different, because we're going to do everything but that. My overall experience with the King George is that it's a bit like the Russian destroyers of battleships. You do a pretty good job farming damage, HE damage, dot damage, but when push comes to shove, it doesn't really shove back that well. The Citadel, it does have a very deep, largely unhittable Citadel, but the rest of the ship is pretty squishy, and so you can't really tank that much. Not just from cruisers, but also from battleships. Even if you angle, battleships that hit accurately are going to get pens into really weird places. In that sense, it's a bit battlecruiser-esque. It just doesn't really have the speed of some of the other battlecruiser-esque ships in this game. The nominal speed of 28 knots. It's decent on paper, but it feels sluggish in practice. So there you see the signature British HE at work. The shell speed is a bit slow, so I was able to sling it over that island at the DeGrasse, even though I didn't actually think it was going to hit. 2 penetrations and 2 fires. It's pretty hilarious stuff. Took another shot at the DeGrasse, set another fire, and that is a permafire. But since the cruiser fire burn time buff probably won't last that long, the Fubuki shows up, and here you can see just how good this HE is against destroyers, since you'll basically never shatter on anything. 4 penetrations, 5,000 damage. Since it's a standard battle, I wasn't really trying to push up that aggressively, and you'll see that this was a good choice because the red team is trying to shove 2 DDs into the cap at the 4-minute mark. Just so you know, this is not really a good idea. It's one thing to say capping wins games, but this is too early and the wrong circumstance for this. Sometimes toward the mid-game, you can get this to work if the enemy team has run too far to the flanks, or they've lemming trained all to one flank, so on and so forth. But here, with just 2 destroyers, not that much backup, and with our team not that far away, it's just not going to work out. It does take a long time to cap a standard battle cap, even with 2 destroyers. That's not to say that this couldn't be done smartly as a tactical measure, just to scare the enemy or to take some pressure off the flanks. But in that case, these destroyers shouldn't be hanging around here. They should have backed into the cap and gone ready to leave once things got dangerous. In fact, this move maybe screwed their team a bit. I took out the Fubuki there, and I think we're going to take out the Nicholas in a bit, but they were up 2 ships before we started heading back to the cap. And after this encounter, I think they're going to be down 1, and they're going to be down multiple destroyers. Now, the destroyer disadvantage is not so bad since it's a standard battle, but toward the late game, even in a standard battle, you don't really want to be down 2 destroyers. Now we're just trying to close the distance between the last destroyer. Sir Derp is trying to get up there and hydro him, since you can tell the cap isn't ticking, so he's still there. We took another cheeky shot at the DeGrasse, and oh my god, 3 fires. I feel so sorry for this guy, but he is just getting pounded by the HE from the KGB. Oh, so this destroyer was a Leningrad, not a Nicholas. And I think we're going to finish him off here again. 3 HE penetrations for more than 3,000 damage. That's excellent. So, nothing really happens here for the next minute or 2, so I'm going to speed it up. The game is not exactly secure at this point, but it's looking pretty bad for the Reds, especially after the New York goes down a bit here. The Z shows up and he's doing something silly like backing up. We fire just the front guns and we get another 3 pens for 5,000 damage. Doesn't look like anyone else is trying to shoot him, so we're gonna get another reload off here. Again, just the front guns. And again, 3 pens for 5,000 damage. We do set a fire, but it looks like someone else finally finishes him off. This is another thing the King George has, which makes it pretty strong. Instead of the usual 30-second battleship reload, it has a 25-second reload. For some reason, Wargaming thought it needed this balance because of the low caliber guns, but it really doesn't. At this point, the game is pretty secure, and we're just going to farm a bit, but I wanted to have this chance to show off the King George's AP. I originally switched because I thought I was going to deal with these 2 cruisers, but the Congo was an opportune target at the time, and I took the shot, and it was actually a really good one. Typically, because of the low caliber and the short fuse, the penetration is really bad for the King George, but against the Congo, I aimed superstructure, and it paid off. Partly, it's probably because he didn't have much saturation, but partly it's because it might have penned sections of the superstructure that normally would have overpenned. Taking a shot at the Pepsi here, we only get 1 overpen, but I think he maneuvered a little bit, or my shot was not quite on. It's not the most accurate thing, but usually does pretty good. Only occasionally I get really poor dispersion like that. Second salvo here, still pretty mediocre. You'll see that one of those shots was a bounce. This is one of those cases where I feel like the view of the ship in the scope is actually pretty deceptive. If you look at the angle indicator, the angle is actually pretty sharp. The Pepsi does run aground though, and as we clear that mountain, it gives us just enough angle that we blap him this time. And now it's time to work on the Congo, because he has the lowest health. Once again, because of the angle and the poor penetration, I aimed a little bit high on the Congo, and it was enough to finish him. The Belfast is angling very strongly, but because the Belfast has very little armor, even these low caliber shells should be able to overmatch the bow or the stern. This is probably one case where you should switch to AP exclusively on the King George, which is when you're really close and fighting thinly armored cruisers. Overmatch will let you get into the ship at pretty much any angle, and then the short fuse will help your shells stick in there, and so you should get a lot of full pens, if not citadels. We're just waiting for him to get out of the smoke here. And there you can see, despite the sharp angle, we got 5 full pens for something like 14,000 damage. Belfast shoots back, but it's basically irrelevant. He turns around, and since this is the 5th kill, I actually wait a little bit to see if he'll give a better angle. And there's pretty much no way that that wasn't going to be the kill shot. So that's the King George doing not very King George-like things. Looking at the results screen, not too much damage, but again, there weren't a lot of battleships in the game, and we mainly shot at destroyers and cruisers. We did get a Confederate, so we did spread the damage around, and we did get a Kraken, so we did secure quite a few kills. We were top of the team with almost 2,000 base XP, again, mostly because we shot at destroyers and cruisers. And of course, the details page is the most interesting part. 30,000 from HE, 60,000 from AP, with roughly the same number of shells hit. 7,000 from fires. This is very unusual for the King George, and I think a good example of how the ship can still be very good without the need to spam HE at battleships. That's pretty much it for this replay. So, have a nice day.